You've got to get up pretty early in the morning to speak to America's hardworking farmers and food producers. We should know. FLM Harvest is a strategic, full-service creative consultancy proud to reach more farmers, farmer boards, and food and commodity associations than any agency in the country. And we understand omni-channel as well as we understand the journey from field to fork. Most importantly, we connect clients to the audiences that matter to them.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Executive Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, really the news, as you know, could be expected when we're talking about foreign policy, the important news of the week here in Washington really affects what's happening out in farm country. As a number of producers are struggling to get their spring corn and soybeans crops into the ground, there's been a big debate over whether or not unplanted acres would qualify for the administration's market facilitation program, that second round of trade assistance for 2019 that was announced late in May. We got some clarification this week from a government official who told Agri-Pulse that USDA analysis showed that unplanted acres would not qualify for MFP. But there is potential for those unplanted acres to get some assistance through a Senate and now House passed disaster bill. The Senate had passed this bill, a $19.1 billion package to provide assistance to hurricane victims as well as wildfires out in the West and flooding victims in the Midwest. Some assistance from 2018 into 2019. The Senate had passed this bill before the Memorial Day recess. The House did their best to do the same. Ran into some three various roadblocks of House conservative members demanding a full recorded vote on the measure. That vote was taken Monday afternoon. Disaster bill is on the way. But Phil, within that disaster bill, the potential for some of these unplanted acres to receive some additional assistance from USDA.
Right, and there was language added to the bill right before it came up in the Senate that authorized payments for prevented planting. As far as anybody knows, this has never been done before. Since we have prevented planting coverage as part of crop insurance, that's been assumed the way you would do it. Of course, this is a very unusual year, and I think the Chase family back in South Dakota.
Yeah, I have a few farmers having issues with unplanted acres have me on speed dial. Yeah.
You've had some interesting conversations. Anyway, I had a chance to talk this week with John Hoeven, Senator from North Dakota, who is chairman of the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee. This is the committee that controls the purse strings for USDA about this bill. He was very involved in writing these provisions, and he told me that they wrote this disaster bill with these trade provisions and these restrictions in mind that USDA had. The decision apparently reaffirmed this week that these new market facilitation program payments would not go for unplanted acres. Anyway, Senator Hoeven said the bill was written so that those acres could qualify for disaster relief as a substitute for the MFP payments.
Mm-hmm. An important thing to keep in mind about those MFP payments, what we do know at this point is they're going to be based on a county-by-county formula depending on how the trade war and the tariff disputes have impacted that individual county and that individual county's production. We don't know the formulas for that quite yet. We don't know what you're going to get in East Central South Dakota where my family farms versus in Illinois where a number of farmers are having similar planting issues, or in South Central Iowa. Right. There's a lot of different variables yet to be announced on this MFP program, and still some details that are, between that and between the particulars on the disaster bill language for unplanted acres, a lot of particulars yet to be announced for producers who are kind of wondering what to do right now.
Right, and Senator Hoeven, another thing he said and a point he made is that at least, and this is regards to the disaster, you mentioned this is also true on the trade assistance program, but USDA is deliberately not putting out a lot of details because they are so worried about influencing planning decisions.
Mm-hmm. So something to keep in mind, something to watch as producers continue to try and get a crop in the ground, depending on what particular crop that might be that they're going to try and put in the ground here in these next couple of weeks, and what the Department of Agriculture might happen to announce on the subject. So we'll keep you up to date on that subject as soon as we know something. You will as well. But on another front, obviously the agricultural community been keenly watching trade as a major topic of concern here these last couple of months. And another wrinkle to that discussion when President Donald Trump announced plans to levy 5% tariffs on the government of Mexico on all goods coming from Mexico until the country is able to do something. The White House has not been particularly specific on this, but do something to address illegal immigration coming into the United States. At this point, we do know the Mexican government is in Washington. There's negotiations ongoing, but as things sit, as we sit here right now talking to you, those tariffs are set to go into effect on Monday.
Yeah, and I say there's a lot of nervous Senate Republicans on Capitol Hill this week. Many of them, especially for farm states, very concerned about this, and they're particularly concerned about the potential impact on NAFTA 2.0, the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement that U.S. agriculture would really like to see across the finish line and approved by Congress. New wrinkle on that with the Democratic chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, who has jurisdiction, of course, over the trade issue and over tariffs, announcing that he's going to bring out a resolution of disapproval if a new tariff is imposed on Mexico. That would presumably pass the House, and the idea would be sent over to the Senate and really put Republicans on the hot seat over there.
Mm-hmm. So trade continues to be a hot topic, a very interesting conversation within the broader subject of foreign policy, and still something to watch on that front, because keep in mind whether or not these tariffs are put in place or are not put in place, that still could potentially complicate the USMCA consideration here on Capitol Hill as well.
No kidding, and the politics are so delicate at this stage.
Mm-hmm. So before we let you go, I want to talk about an upcoming trip that President Trump is planning on taking to the state of Iowa, and that is where he will be visiting an ethanol plant. And one can make an educated guess that this is due to a victory lap the administration is looking to take on an announcement that was made last week, since we last saw you here, on E15. The administration moving forward with plans to allow E15 sales year-round, as opposed to previously there was that 3-month break there during the summer driving season. And so now the administration moving forward with rulemaking that we expect to be subject of a lawsuit here very, very quickly, but the administration going to Iowa in theory, of course, to celebrate this E15 move and this potential for more ethanol sales during the summer months because of the sale of a higher blend.
Yeah, and to also try to tampen down the concerns about the trade issue, the trade war with China, Mexico, and in the farm economy generally. And obviously the president wants to keep a lid on that.
Yeah, I suppose with farmers being an incredibly important political base for support for this president, knows that those are some issues that he has to quell a little bit.
Right, some anxiety in the base.
Right. And so we'll be sure to keep you up to date on that trip, as well as other activities within this administration and on Capitol Hill as they pertain to you, your businesses, and your operations. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.